Okay, thank you. I'm not sure if anybody wants to play at home, but these are some questions that we've developed for our CEO lunch and learns that we do. So we actually pass these questions out before I start my engagement, our presentation, and a lot of times I don't even get to my presentation. So just out of curiosity, anybody looking at these questions, has anybody scored themselves less than a 9? You know, one of the things is that if you scored less than a 9 then to any of these questions, there's a possibility that your revenue, could be at risk and you're not, where you should be or would like to be with your customers. So obviously the first question is, how loyal are your customers? And then how do you know? Do you really know where you stand? Any of these questions really stand out to anybody that, make you nervous or anything that you'd really like to know from your clients?
Yeah, I mean, I guess my feedback would be is you never know, because direct conversation, people usually won't, provide you with negative feedback or pushback. So you're flying solo on your relationship with your client when you're answering these questions. So from my standpoint, that always puts you in a vague kind of situation, because you don't have a third party or somebody giving you guidance that isn't a direct relationship.
Yeah. Is anybody using surveys out there that gauge their customer loyalty and retention?
We do. This is Jim with Eagle One. We do. One of the things that's an interesting question is number 5. Is there something you may not be hearing from inside your organization? We are a company of people. We have lots of people doing the work and using technology, but sometimes the folks that are doing the work, even though we're observing, there is a hesitation to tell us kind of that our baby's, not doing so well. So sometimes it's tough to get your inside group to give you feedback. And we've worked a lot on our culture to make sure that we could get honest feedback, because let's face it, when somebody tells you internally that the baby's ugly, then, you tend to look at them a bit differently, no matter how objective you are.
Yeah, Jim, that's an outstanding point. Anybody else have any comments on any of the questions?
Yeah, so, just based on personal experience, what Jim was just saying, and yeah, people are hesitant to maybe tell you the truth to your face because there might be some blowback and, et cetera, et cetera. But I think most people just don't want to tell you that your baby's ugly because if they feel like they're not being a nice person by doing that, right? And now some people don't have a problem telling you that. Some people will just tell you straight out, your baby is freaking ugly and you need to do something about it. But most people will not. So the value of having a third party do that, I think is just, it's priceless.
Yeah. So right now, the top 3 concerns for CEOs, and we're strictly B2B, we don't do B2C, but I did a poll and I talked to about 30 CEOs over the last few months, 15 Vistage CEOs, and then 15 CEOs of my client. I have another business, which is Mark Grace knows is my clothing business. I make custom clothing for executives, and just did a quick poll for them. And there's a lot of concerns right now post-COVID, but the top 3 that came out were, number 1, that they have no idea what their customers are thinking right now post-COVID. Number 2, to Jim's point, question number 5, that being the CEO and being the leader, that they know that there's something they're not hearing internally inside their organization, because no one wants to give the boss bad news until it's too late. And then number 3, they don't really know their customers' pain points and new challenges that COVID has brought up, because all the key indicators have gone away. So those are the top 3 things that our CEOs are telling us about with regard to their customers. So These questions, when we do our lunch and learn, they really start some great conversations, and they really get you thinking. And we're not out to incriminate anybody but we just ask them, why did you give yourself a 5, or what are you thinking? So those are the questions. And then so I want to show you real quickly, so we're kind of playing with real bullets here. Here's a company that we're working with right now. It's a company, I've white labeled everything, so I don't, let you know who the customer is, but they're a $30 million company, right, in New England. And what they do is they do janitorial services and entry mats for, like Publix, Kroger, and then they do janitorial services as well, right? So they're $30 million, and this particular company right here is 14 million of it, right? So this is the spreadsheet the CEO sent me, or the people that we're talking to, and he's got notes here of how he feels they're doing, and then what he wants to know. Okay, they do a contract. They do 3-year contracts. Okay, so you see this blank space right here? He has no idea what this customer's thinking. 0.
And it's 50% of his business?
It's 50% of his business. So this guy's a CEO. He's a Harvard MBA. He owns a couple private equity companies as well. So I'm just going to give you a quick example here. So he's really looking forward to getting, since we interviewed and talked to these people, obviously he really wants their feedback, right? So just give you a quick. So you see here, this guy, one of the main guys, asked the 0 to 10 question. He's giving him a 6. Right. So I asked him, in your opinion, Brian, at a day-to-day basis, how you interact, why do you give them a 6? So the feedback that we're getting is not positive. And I've talked to 5 other people, and out of 0 to 10, he's not getting anything above a 7. Right. So we go through. So one of the questions I asked, so I asked him, I said, so with that question, I said, do you think you're getting what you're paying for? And he says, no, I think we're getting the everyday. So the majority of the everyday stuff we're paying for, but the additional scope, like I said, is less. We're not getting the value which we've pared back the scope. So essentially he's saying they're not getting he doesn't feel they're getting what they're paying for.
Okay.
So all the red and yellow are, so that's the red for us are detractor comments, right? And then the yellow are passive comments. So you can see where, this particular client, which is $14 million of his revenue, there's a good possibility that they're not going to renew that contract.
Wow.
And he has no idea.
Damn.
Right. This is what we do. This is and that's why I just want to show a real example, of what we do and how, and our average conversation goes about 12 minutes and 42 seconds. And all we're doing is asking questions. I'm not interjecting anything. Right. And so go ahead.
So let me, if I could just ask a question. So
Sure.
Does I know what the customer said, if you were talking to not the executive team at this vendor partner, does their team think everything is good too?
Our customer that we're the.
Yeah,
So,
does the
yeah.
customer beyond the CEO, the director, the manager, whatever it is, do the people below the CEO of the vendor, do they actually believe things are good? Or
yeah,
do
well,
you know
that's
yet?
yeah, we don't know yet.
Okay.
So I just wanted to give you an idea of where that gap, right? The perception gap is, and that's really scary, right? He has no notes in here. And one of the interesting things is this particular relationship. Now, our client is the CEO, but he's not the founder of the company. The founder of the company, this is his relationship. And this contract's coming up for renewal in 2022. So we've had a lot of traction in the last few months. I just talked to a guy in Scotland. He's got a $50 million, well, in euro, he's got a 50 million, which equates to a $50 million plumbing company in Scotland, and he was wanting us to talk. He's got two clients. He's got his wholesalers, then he's got his end users, which are the plumbers. Went yesterday and talked to a company in Calhoun, Georgia. They're in the financial services business. We're getting ready to start engagement with them on next week. They actually were considering bringing in, a lot of people think they can do this on their own. They were going to bring in some college students to call their customers, and they tried it with one customer, and the customer said, don't ever have that person call me again.
Yeah.
Right? Because they're reading from a script. Right? So it's really important because one of the things when we're giving our presentation, there's a lot of trust. I mean, you're giving us your best customers to call. Right? You have to have somebody that is, I'm a business owner. I've been in straight commission sales my whole career. The people that we have calling are ex-Coca-Cola executives. We got one guy from the Baltimore Ravens. They've got P&L responsibility. They know business. So a lot of times when we're asking questions, some of the things he wanted to know was, like, how do we secure the extension that was going to save them money and lock us in for more years? These are questions he wanted us to ask. So when we ask questions, we have our 3 net promoter questions where, on a 0 to 10, on a scale of 0 to 10, what do you give them? Then if they give anything less than a 9, I know that there's smoke in the wood pile. Then I'm going to say, okay, the next question is, okay, Dave, why do you give them an 8? And then they tell me, and then the next question is, what do they need to do to get to a 9 or a 10? And that's kind of where all their gold comes out. Right. So there are and then our client comes up with 4 or 5 questions that they really want to know, like these, what he wants to know. And so there are a lot of times where we have to go off script based on what the client tells us. Right. He may say something and I'm like, well, okay, so now I've got to start doing some digging or start having an actual business conversation. But there are also times where revenue opportunities for our client, like in this particular case, where we uncovered can everybody see this?
Yes.
Yeah. So in this case, we not only find risk, but we also find opportunities. So what's interesting company about this company, they do supply chain management. They compete with, the Accentures of the world, and these guys are about a $40 million company. They actually have an internal customer experience team that wasn't able to get the information that we were getting. And what their customers told us was, even when they get a call from their internal team, they know there's still an agenda there. Right. So we actually uncovered a $2 million opportunity with NCR that they had no idea was coming down the road, that they were going to put out to bid, and they didn't put it out to bid. They ended up giving the business back, to Barkawi.
Hey, Mark, do you record the calls and give them to the CEOs?
We do. So that's why we give you word for word verbatims from your customers.
Yeah, I was going to ask, how do you get the trust of the customer to give the feedback? Is there ever any hesitation to send it back up?
No, I mean, our hit rate is 97%.
Wow.
versus digital surveys that are, as are, at best, low double digits return.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's great.
This particular client right here, they manage it's a company here in Atlanta, Valentine. They are a huge financial services company. This particular customer was actually interviewing people because this $10 million endowment fund, they thought they were too small for Robert. And they were actually interviewing people while we were talking to them, because they thought their small $10 million endowment fund was too small. And at the end of the call, like Robert said, it's great that she shared feedback. She was unwilling to tell me directly. And at the end of the call, the lady said, you know what, have Robert give me a call. And ended up saving that account.
It's powerful.
You know, this particular company is private equity. Private equity really likes us a lot for buying and selling companies. So the more loyal, you know, once they get the feedback, this particular company was, they did mobile communications. They did first responder mobile communications companies. So we were actually talking to soldiers in Afghanistan that were jumping out of airplanes. So they do the little communication box where you see the little satellite dish in the mountains, right? That's what these guys sell. So now we were talking to their resellers, and we were talking to the soldier, which was the end user, and we uncovered about $5 million in risk between their resellers. Our value proposition is we're Switzerland, and we don't promote or defend. Like you said, Jim, all we do is tell you if the baby's pretty or the baby's ugly. We have no agenda. And you know, a lot of our clients, and you know, a lot of times I'll ask, one of the questions that I ask before I get off the phone is, how do you feel that Mission Mobility or Barkawi or Ballantine or Eagle One, you know, brought us in versus using a survey? And everybody says, your loyalty goes up exponentially with your client just bringing somebody in, because you cared enough to bring in someone to actually speak with them to see how they feel. That's essentially what we do, and that's the value that we deliver. And then we come back and we actually give you a revenue risk score of where your risk lies.
And Mark, what's your target customer? How big do they need to be?
You know, really, you know, 10 to 50 million. That's why Vista is such a good environment for us. So 10 to 50 million is right in our wheelhouse. We've done, you know, 150 million you know, last year. Well, prior to COVID, our clients averaged about 100 million, but our sweet spot is really privately owned companies, guys that are, it's their baby, right? So I'd say, you know, 10 to 50 million, 60 million is right in our sweet spot.
And how long does an engagement usually last?
We recommend a year. So we drink our own bathwater. We tell our clients that if they don't feel that they're getting the value that we said that we're going to give them, you can opt out in 6 months. Right. So we haven't had anybody opt out yet.
Mark, quick question here is that, it's always clear to me that corporations, you know, have great resources for sales and marketing, but little resources to really, you know, assist customers. So I'm not surprised the results you get, but what I understand is when you go to customers and ask them these difficult questions, you know, like we all get surveys, digital surveys, and we all get people that try and give us surveys. I rarely want to fill them out because I feel like, look, what am I getting out of this? You know, why am I spending my time with helping this company when they didn't really pay attention to me? How do you get past that? I mean, some of their customers have to feel that way.
Yeah, we don't. That's why we don't use surveys, right?
No, but I mean, you do it in person. So is there an incentive for them to talk to you?
Yeah, there is, because of how we set it up, right? And that's why our hit rate is, you know, over 95%. So
well, do they get paid or
no.
More service, free service? I don't know.
No, so the CEO actually calls the customers and asks them to speak with us.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Right. So so the CEO or somebody on the executive team, CFO, COO, and typically it's the CEO that gets engaged. And when they call it, essentially it's a total turnkey. We've got scripts, we've got everything that they need to, essentially the CEO calls and says, hey, we appreciate your business. You know, you've been a customer for a long time, but we know we're not perfect. We know we have weeds in our garden. So to that end, we're going to bring in a third party to talk to you. We want you to give them the good, bad, and the ugly. You're not going to hurt our feelings, and you can remain anonymous if you want. And so when it's set up, yeah. So we allow, and you know, when I call the customers, I'm essentially saying, when I get you on the phone, Mark, I'm saying, hey, Mark, how are you? My name is Mark Fonseca with Pragmetrix Group. Thank you for your time. I want to let you know that we are in no way associated at all with FCC. they just brought us in to talk to you, and a lot of companies do. So I want you to, give me the good, bad, and the ugly. And at the end of the interview, you can remain anonymous if you want. And you can almost hear them. You can almost hear they take a sigh of relief. They're like, they're like, okay, once they realize they can remain anonymous, then they're like, okay, well then we're good.
Does it then create expectations for you to, because do they ask questions about, hey, can they do this better? And, can they do this for us? Do you become a negotiator kind of thing
No. We have one company that's, we don't have that authority, right? We have one company, it's a big company. They do, it's called Compass Management. They negotiate food contracts for like Lockheed and Auburn and stuff like that. But no, like I said, we really don't want to do that. We just want to bring you the truth back. But we do have people that want us to go in if they have a 3-year contract, go in at 2 years or go in at 2 years and 2 months and find out what it's going to take for our client to renew that agreement. And people will tell us, right? They'll tell us, but they're not going to tell them, right? Because they're so.
Another question, because I've come from technical businesses where the customers are engineers, so large, engineer backgrounds. And boy, I tell you, when we hired people like you to come in and do it, and we'd ask customers, what we did see it many times, because this is how engineers think. Engineers always want the next improvement. They want, there's a slight thing wrong with your problem or service, and they're gonna, when you ask them a question, what do you think? They go, they do a great job, best in the industry, and that's 4 seconds. And then the next 15 minutes are spent telling you how they could do better and what's the next widget and the problem they're talking about is probably pretty small. Does that happen to you or?
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's so nuanced, right? The scores are so nuanced. Just because someone, what's interesting is, they'll tell you one thing, and like you said, Mark, they do that and they go off on tangents. But it's interesting. Just because someone gives you a 10, every 10's different, right? You think about your favorite restaurant, right? You may like the food, but your wife loves the owner. She loves the service, right? So that's why we always ask, why do you give them a 10? And so we had one company that we did recently that had really good score. Their net promoter score was 72. They got a lot of 9s and 10s. So one question we asked was called the magic wand question. I said, Adrian, if you could take a magic wand and ask for anything to get to an 11 or a 12, what would it be? So this guy, he actually did hydraulic hose repair. And they would go on the field and fix the hose, the yellow iron in the field, so they weren't, so they got them up and running. And a couple of guys said, well, you know what? While they're in there fixing the hose, if they could change the air filter, the oil filter, and the gas filter while they're in there, that would save us a lot of time from pulling that equipment out of the field to service it. So I just kind of stuck that away. And the next guy that gave him a 10 that couldn't think of anything, I said, hey, well, what if they could do this? 17 out of the 30 clients said it was a great idea. So now the guy just increased his revenue by 12%, and now he carries filters on his vans, and he built a moat around his competitors because they don't do that. So you're always asking questions too about innovation as well.
But
So
you're just relaying, again, you're not negotiating a problem away.
No.
You're just relaying
Correct.
good information to
Correct.
someone.
Yeah, we're giving you,
Switzerland.
Yeah, we're Switzerland. We don't, listen, and people know that too, and we don't have so one of the biggest objections we get, Jim, is you don't know my customer or you don't know my industry. And we say, you know what, I really don't want to know your industry, because if I know your industry, then I'm leading the witness. And we did work for this big telecommunications company that was the backbone for like Verizon and AT&T. And we were interviewing all their vice presidents for their customers. And they started using all this vernacular and all this, jargon I didn't understand. And I would say, Jim, I really don't know what that term means. Can you explain it to me? And so now then they really knew that, this guy is, he just has no agenda, right? He's not a plant. So
Mark, your company's you're normally working with companies with large accounts that may or may not be at risk. Do you look at other industries or employees or relationships with executives?
Yeah.
Because the franchise business is one, not that you want to break into that one because it'll probably drive you absolutely insane. But they're always trying to figure out what their franchisees are thinking.
Yeah, we have another product that we're just coming out with. Actually, it's going to be a monster product that it's going to be for employees internally, that you'll be able to find out exactly what your clients are saying. It's GDPR compliant. We're actually acquiring a company out of Europe, and you can actually find out what's going on inside your organization. It's all text-based and email-based. Anything that's going out of your organization, you can find out exactly what your employees are thinking. And if you really want to, you can't do this in Europe, but you can do it here. You can find out exactly what your employees are thinking and what they're saying, and you can even narrow it down to who's saying what, as far as diversity and if there's any threats in your organization. So that's the next product we've got coming out.
Yeah, when we were at Duncan, we used to do that every 2 years with the survey from, they claimed it was anonymous, but you'd always be having people trying to figure out who said what.
Yeah, so this is actually a software. This is actually a software that we download, and it just monitors everybody's emails and their texts. Yeah, so you can find out where your threats are, who's getting ready to leave. Again, it's GDPR compliant because their privacy laws are so much better than ours. In America, we want to know everything.
Yeah, it's once you get up in that executive office and figure out that they're doing all of that, you end up with 2 phones, multiple email accounts. Right. I have all those. Yeah. We were getting keystroke reports and stuff like that were, just should not have been being done. But
right.
I'm sure with people working at home, that's probably, now a big thing.
It is. Yeah. People have no idea, right, how productive their people are at home, what they're doing at home.
Right. Yeah. So I can tell you how long you've been in your program, how long it's been idle, how many keystrokes you do.
Yeah. Are you in your, yeah. Right.
Mark, you said that your best clients are Vistage members.
Yeah, I would, any privately held, because privately held, it's their baby, right? We've done work for a couple of public companies, like divisions of public companies. But privately held companies, under 50 million or under 100 million are really a good sweet spot for us.
So how do you market your services, and how can we be helpful?
Well, speaking engagements like this, we do lunch and learns. We do lunch and learns all the time. When we do a lunch and learn, if we get a room full of CEOs, everybody knows CEOs are in a bubble. They know they're not even getting the truth from their own executive team, especially their VP of sales. And the VP of sales is most threatened by us because he thinks the CEO, they should know what's going on in their business, but the customers, it's just human nature. The closer you get to your customer, the least likely they're going to give you bad news. And no one wants to tell the CEO what's going on until it's too late. So speaking engagements are always good, either YPO or EO, Vistage, any place for us where they're executives. So we're doing, lunch and learns are always the best for us.
And your value prop, again, Mark, part of your value prop is the fact that you're having high-end folks do the interviews that have critical thinking skills, business experience, and the ability to talk with a CEO instead of a digital survey, a clerical person, those type things. Because that's what I've seen that makes a big difference with a CEO.
Yeah, you can't just have anybody call that. Especially your best clients, because typically we're interviewing the 20% of your clients that generate 80% of your revenue.
Yeah.
So a lot of guys are thinking, okay, what are you going to do? There's only 3 things that can happen. We can make their customers angry. We just keep them neutral, or we can increase the experience. And So there's a lot of trust in what we do. But then also too is that we're impartial. You know, we are an unbiased third party that's going to come in and really, you know, talk to your customers and really find out how they feel about you. Because remember, loyalty is an emotion, right? So if you're familiar with the numbers, how the numbers actually work, if you're getting anything less than a 9, you know, some guys will think an 8's a good score, but when I'm on the phone, I know that 7s and 8s are passives. If something doesn't change, they're gonna leave, and you're not getting 100% of their business. So you could be doing more business with them. So only if you're getting 9s and 10s, 9s and 10s are going to exhibit 3 behaviors. They're going to continue to do business with you. They're going to buy other products and services that you sell. And most importantly, they do and will give you unsolicited word of mouth referrals. Just like Costco. Costco has in their internal documents, they will not do any advertising. It's all word of mouth. Anything less than a 9, 7s and 8s. I mean, we just go through. I mean, the verbatims. I'll show you this one right here. So this passive, right? So this person said, you know, part of the reason that we've been so patient with them as we have is because of our relationship with the rep and the broker. If that rep or broker leaves, they're going to lose that. They're going to lose that client. You know, they've rewarded our loyalty by making it more difficult for us to buy those products. So these are 7s and 8s. They're satisfied, but they're not loyal. They're not enthusiastic about you. You know, they're bored. They're satisfied. They're not loyal.
No, very intriguing. I got to tell you, it was a nice presentation. You do wonders for, I mean, when you're in that little group of folks that don't hear exactly what's being said by their clients and customers, it's amazing when you get this kind of information.
You know, what's interesting too is that how we started the company was very organic. You know, I was in a Vistage group with a guy, and he called me one day just really, really angry and upset. He just got blindsided. He lost his biggest account. And he took the guy to lunch and everything, and the guy just was basically lying to his face. And so he started researching this. He was a GE guy, 22-year GE guy. So he started doing all this research. He came across Bain's book, The Ultimate Question, Net Promoter System. And he called me in and said, Mark, I want to hire you to do something for me. I want to hire you to call my best clients. I'm going to call them, tell them you're going to be calling them, and I want you to be completely honest with them. And the information that we got was transformational for his company. And so what we did is put together a little case study. We did our first Vistage lunch and learn, and right off the bat, we got an engagement.
Nice. Well, Mark Grace probably knew that GE guy, so.
Maybe, you know, there's lifers there. I had just a quick thought, Mark, you know, because there's a customer experience organization, and, you know, they're pretty strong here in Atlanta. You know, I mean, it's one of those professional organizations, you know, where they certify you in customer experience, and there's new customer experience executives in corporations, you know, but my view of that organization is like product managers. They have all the responsibility, but no ability to ever, they're always frustrated because CEOs and marketing VPs and sales VPs just blow them off, even though they know they have these big problems. It's a big power and political struggle in this whole thought process. How do you deal with it? I'm sure you have to see it a lot where the sales guy says, no, we got this under control, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. So that's the main reason that, you know, we're getting ready to start an engagement. I did the kickoff meeting yesterday for this one customer, and that's why it's so important to have for us to have the CEO engage with the customer and call them. I don't want a sales guy. So what happens, a lot of CEOs know that even like when they use surveys, the bigger the company, especially when you tie survey results to compensation and bonuses, people game the system. Yeah. Right? They game the system, and then the bigger the organizations, the easier it is for people to hide.
Yeah, this is the biggest issue with customer experience groups, is that they, like product managers, have all the responsibility but no authority. And So usually, they need you to overcome this problem because
Right.
nothing gets done. Yeah.
Yeah, and then a lot of times we've actually had companies that, your sales guy will call the customer and say, hey, we're bringing this company in, can you give us a 9 or a 10?
Oh, absolutely.
Right? I mean,
All political bullshit.
right. Yeah, and so that's how we get around that. And because we had that problem early when we started the company. And now that's why we have the CEO call. Because, he wants to, and just the CEO calling, because like yesterday I was talking to this one guy, he said, Mark, I haven't talked to some of these customers in a while. He said, it'll be good for me to do this. So, no, that's a great point, Mark. So, not sure if any of this makes sense. I know I've been rambling for a while, but any more questions?
Any other questions, comments, or issues for Mark? Well, you all have a
Thank
great
you, guys.
weekend. I really appreciate your participation today. I will be editing both presentations and getting them up on the YouTube page. And again, that's something that each of you can use as links to help market both of your businesses. Speaking of that value of having a video to send people to. So thank you all. Have a
Thank
great
you,
weekend.
guys.
And a great Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.